Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. It is my honor and a privilege to chair this very important discussion today. I talk about the future, about our common values, and ultimately about our protection and the protection of those values and our resilience facing the enemy. While we are enjoying this privilege to be able to debate here on such topics with distinguished guests, the war continues in Ukraine. But Ukraine is not the ultimate enemy for Russia today. Western values, our transatlantic community, is the enemy of Moscow. More importantly, NATO and its expansion to the east has been cited among the reasons for which Russia considers the West as an enemy, and ultimately among the reasons that Russia has started the war in Ukraine in the first place, to prevent Kiev from getting closer to the West. The Baltic Sea and the Black Sea region unite over one major perceived fear these days. We have to make sure our society remains safe while we manage the danger next door, including caring for those in need, the refugees having to leave their country. We are joined today by two distinguished guests, Her Excellency Mrs. Eva Maria Nimitz and His Excellency Mr. Bogdan Aurescu. Both are career diplomats, both serving their countries in various key positions for more than a decade already. So allow me to give the floor to you both. Starting with Your Excellencies, Mrs. Nimitz, please let me ask you, considering your experience so far, what is it really that we are facing today when we are talking about the danger in the East? And when we are speaking about the Russian fears in our countries. So please allow us to give the floor to you and give your perspective on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It is really a great pleasure for me to be hosted by my good colleague Bogdan here in Bucharest. I look very much forward to our discussions later today on bilateral issues, but of course, foremost about the security situation in Europe. And reflecting the question that you just posed, from our perspective, of course, we see that the security situation is changed because Russia has violated all the international agreements. It has violated the fundamental basis of the European security architecture, and there is no trust towards Russia anymore. Therefore, we must continue to strengthen our security, to strengthen defense and deterrence posture of NATO, and strengthen the security of our countries. At the moment, we see the fight between democracies and autocracies, and of course, we must continue to focus on security of our values-based territories, security, and continue to defend our values, democratic values, in fight against Russia.
Piece of technology, sorry about that. Thank you very much, Mrs. Nimitz. Mr. Bogdan Aurescu, do you want to give your perspective as well on the very same question? Please, you have the floor.
Well, thank you so much for organizing this event. And I'm also looking forward to have our discussion today, our consultations, which are long due because we have tried to organize your visit here, dear Eva Maria, for quite some time, but because of objective reasons, we were unable to do it before. But I'm very glad that you are here, and I'm very glad that Romania and Estonia are very like-minded countries, and we have the same values and the same interests, both within the EU and within NATO, and we are working together very close. last week we have met in Bratislava during the B9 format, and we have already discussed about all these matters in detail in a very open way. And I think for us it's very important that we join our forces and do our best to stop this illegal war of Russia against Ukraine. And I think this is one of the darkest moments in our recent history, and not just for Ukraine, but also for our region, for the European security, for the Euro-Atlantic security, and also this has global projections. And this aggression has shown what damage Russia is capable of inflicting to our region. We have condemned this illegal aggression from day one. And indeed, what we have seen yesterday, the images of the massacre in Bucha and other cities of Ukraine are appalling. And let me be very clear. The Bucha massacre is the responsibility of Russia, because all these crimes were committed when this area of Ukraine was under Russian occupation. And we have to do our best to stop this illegal war against Ukraine. And we have to do our best to make all those responsible for this massacre be accountable before justice. And that's why together, both Romania, Estonia, and many other countries, I think more than 40 countries, have seized the International Criminal Court on the 2nd of March, and we have asked the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court to start an investigation regarding war crimes, crimes of genocide, and crimes against humanity committed on the territory of Ukraine. And unfortunately, what we have seen yesterday is only a confirmation that we were right, and this is so unfortunate that we have such a confirmation. So we need to continue our efforts to adopt new sanctions of the European Union. We have to continue our efforts within NATO to consolidate our defense on the eastern flank in order to create a forward defense presence on the eastern flank. The decisions which were taken recently by the NATO summit on the 24th of March were very important. The creation of 4 new battle groups, including one in Romania. This is a very important decision of the North Atlantic Alliance because it is balancing the presence on the eastern flank. It is enhancing our security, but of course it is not enough, and that's why we also welcome the decision of the NATO summit to accelerate the process of transformation of NATO, taking into account this new reality, which is far more dangerous than before. And that's why the military authorities of the alliance were tasked in order to elaborate proposals which we are going to discuss and decide upon during the NATO summit in Madrid in June. This is the essence of our effort. On the refugees, of course, we have worked a lot, and Romania is in the front line of this effort, together with Poland and the other neighboring countries of Ukraine. As of yesterday, we have received in Romania more than 652,000 refugees. And the effort of the Romanian authorities, together with the effort of the civil society, of the regular Romanians, was extremely complex, challenging, but at the same time rewarding. So this is in essence what we have to do. And we have to continue to support our partners in the region. We have to continue to support the Republic of Moldova, which is very much under pressure of this huge wave of refugees. They have received more refugees per capita than any other countries neighboring Ukraine and facing this challenge. And this is the reason why tomorrow in Berlin, I will co-host, together with the foreign ministers of France and Germany, conference to support Moldova, the Moldova Support Conference, which will launch the Moldova Support Platform. And the purpose of this conference is to stimulate more support, more international assistance to the Republic of Moldova in order to make the government in Chisinau be able to cope with all these challenges, the refugees, the economic situation, the energy security deficiencies. All these are very important for Romania. I hope that we will be able to discuss more about these aspects during our debate today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. And since you brought up the EU dimension, and considering that the EU has recently adopted the strategic compass as well to focus on better security and defense of the European Union, I would like to ask you to further give us your detail, also Minister Limets, from Estonia perspective. What is it that you believe that the EU will do, and what is the European Union strategy to bring the countries together in order to defend ourselves, considering the threat next door?
Thank you for this question. And of course, this year is very particular because in both of the organizations which are important for us, the EU and NATO, we are preparing new strategic concepts, new strategic documents. And at the same time, we see that the security environment has changed dramatically. So it means that in very last moment, we had to adjust all these documents. And of course, NATO strategic concept is not adopted yet, so we have more time to adjust current challenges into this document. But when we speak about the strategic concept, and from our perspective, it was very important that we agreed on, among the member states, we agreed on threat of Russia. And it was really one of the last amendments into the document. There are many other amendments in the document which are, from our perspective, very important. For example, we also noticed that there are changes in the security environment of Europe. For us also, this document is very important because it also confirms the strategic partnership between NATO and the European Union, and clearly says that security of the European countries relies on transatlantic cooperation with NATO's Article 5 as a core of it. So there are many really important elements in this strategic concept which guides the European Union in forthcoming years. Another maybe not that common element which we find important is related to attribution of hybrid attacks, including cyber attacks. It shows that the European countries are willing to really figure it out who is responsible for hybrid attacks, and also it helps to provide means how to cope with this kind of attacks. And let me recall from last autumn hybrid attacks from Belarus, when Belarus targeted European countries with migration flows. And from our perspective, it was very important to start speaking clearly that they were hybrid attacks and not just random migration flows. And these kind of elements are very important in the new strategic concept. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister Aurescu, you brought up the NATO dimension earlier. So if possible, could you relay a bit to the EU strategic compass and the NATO dimension, considering that NATO has recently announced also the deployment of 4 new battle groups on the eastern flank, in addition to those that are already stationed in the Baltic Sea? How will this shape the security situation in the Black Sea, in your opinion?
Well, as Eva Maria already mentioned, the strategic compass is a very important document of the European Union as far as the security dimension is concerned, and it's opening a new chapter in the CSDP implementation. And I'm very glad that we were able, with the help of the French presidency of the Council of the European Union, to adopt this very important document well, according to the schedule, which was foreseen at the beginning, despite the fact that indeed we had new developments as far as the security environment in our neighborhood in Europe and in the Euro-Atlantic space because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I'm glad that we were able to adapt the description of the security environment according to the new strategic and security reality. That was one of the challenges that we were facing as far as the adoption in due time of the strategic compass. The External Action Service was also very helpful in that regard. And I think now the strategic compass is adapted to what we have in our neighborhood. Because indeed, as I mentioned, not only once, for the European Union to be a true global actor, as it wants to be, it is very important that the European Union be able to be influential in its own neighborhood. We can't move well towards other horizons unless we are able to cope with our challenges in our close proximity. Second, it is very important that the strategic compass emphasizes the role of NATO. NATO is an anchor of our security in Europe. And it's very important that the document which is launching the strategic compass emphasizes the importance of Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, which is the main framework of ensuring our collective defense. This is extremely important for us and I think for all other allies in NATO, but especially for the allies on the eastern flank, taking into account this very complicated reality that we have just close to us. And the fact that the strategic compass is emphasizing the complementarity between NATO and the European Union in terms of defense and security, this is something that we wanted to be clearly and explicitly underlined in the document of the strategic compass. It is also important that the strategic compass is emphasizing the role of partnerships, the partnership of the European Union with various like-minded actors around the globe. So not only the partnership with NATO, which is, in my view, the first of all partnerships, the mother of partnerships of the European Union, if I may say so, but also with the United States, with United Kingdom, with Turkey, with Norway, with other countries which are important for EU in terms of defense and security. And also the partnerships with the countries in our neighborhood. These are also emphasized there, and we are able now, based on the provisions of the strategic compass document, to grant more assistance to these countries. And Eva Maria just mentioned hybrid attacks or hybrid challenges dimension. This is extremely important. And we are able now to extend more assistance to these countries, more structural, a more institutionalized approach towards the Republic of Moldova, towards Georgia, towards Ukraine, and other partners in our close neighborhood. As far as NATO is concerned, I have already mentioned the decisions of the NATO summit on the 24th of March. And there were two very important decisions as far as Romania is concerned. The first one is the creation of these battle groups. The battle groups in the southern part of the eastern flank. Now we have 8 battle groups, 4 in the north, 4 in the south, in the southern part of the eastern flank. And for us, of course, the most important one is the battle group in Romania. We have advocated already since last year for the creation of this battle group. Immediately after we have noticed the increase in Russian assertiveness and aggressive behavior. Because I have to remind you that all this conflict in Ukraine that we are seeing now is in fact a very well prepared, well, very well, it's something that, well, it's debatable since the war plans of President Putin did not went according to this plan, but they planned this and they have spent a lot of effort in planning this. Let me remind you that last year in April, we had a huge military exercise in the Black Sea region, in the regions where a little bit after the Russian troops started to be deployed. As a matter of fact, after that exercise, 80% of those troops and equipment were not withdrawn, and the current aggression against Ukraine was built on what was left after that exercise. So seeing all these increase in assertiveness and aggressive behavior of Russia, we have started our demarches to ask for the creation of this battle group. And President Iohannis was leading all this diplomatic effort, and he has spoken with a lot of NATO leaders, with heads of state and government. And well, one of the most decisive moments was his conversation during the European Council last December with President Macron, and he managed to convince President Macron to accept France taking the leadership as framework nation of this future battle group in Romania. We have discussed with the SACEUR, we have discussed with other NATO officials, and after 24th of February, after the aggression against Ukraine started, we have intensified our efforts for the creation of this battle group in Romania, and we have been successful in speeding up the creation of the battle group. So that's why for us the decision of the summit, which took place on the 24th of March in Brussels, was extremely important. And the reason why we have asked for the creation of this battle group was the fact that actually before that the presence of NATO allies on the eastern flank was a little bit disbalanced. We had a dual approach as far as the eastern flank was concerned. An enhanced forward presence in the northern part of the eastern flank, where Romania also contributes with our troops in Poland in the battle group on the territory of our strategic partner and ally. But at the same time, in the southern part of the eastern flank, we had a tailored forward presence, which did not allow too much of an allied presence. And that's why the creation of this battle group has the meaning of balancing the posture on the whole of the eastern flank. Let me remind you that Russia does not see the eastern flank divided into parts. They see it as a whole eastern flank. So that's why it is extremely important to balance the presence, because in this way the posture on the whole eastern flank becomes more coherent, more united, and indeed more efficient. This is the first decision. The second decision was the one that I have already mentioned, the acceleration of the process of long-term transformation of the posture on the eastern flank. And we have to be very aware of the fact that the Russian aggression in Ukraine has changed the parameters of the security architecture in the region and in Europe. Because the current posture on the eastern flank was created after the illegal occupation of Crimea in 2014. It was a response to that. It was a legitimate, strictly defensive, non-escalatory response. But it was adapted to the security situation of that reality. Now we have a different reality. We have a massive military presence of Russia in Ukraine in our close proximity. We have a Russian occupation of the Serpents Island, which is very close to the Romanian coast. And at the same time, we have another very massive presence of Russia in Belarus, which de facto has become another military district of Russia. So we have to adapt to this new reality, and the decision of the summit on the 24th of March is very important, relevant in that regard, because it mentions the necessity for this transformation of the posture. On the 4th of March, during a NATO extraordinary ministerial meeting that we had in the context of the Russian aggression, I have asked for rethinking the philosophy, the concept, the structure, the constitutive elements of the posture on the whole eastern flank. And the SACEUR and also the Secretary General have elaborated proposals in that regard. Now the military authorities of NATO were tasked by the summit on the 24th of March to elaborate new proposals based on these proposals by SACEUR and by the Secretary General. And I'm looking forward to see the shape of those proposals. And we are going to take decisions during the NATO summit in Madrid. And then, of course, all these operational measures will also have to be reflected in the new strategic concept that we have to adopt in Madrid. So this is, in a nutshell, what is, well, the most, let's say, important outcome of the NATO summit. And at the same time, well, it gives you a certain measure on what is the size of our task for the month to come until the June summit in Madrid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Lumens, do you want to further address the question related to NATO, perhaps?
Thank you, absolutely. And I also want to echo what was said by Bogdan, that we must continue to strengthen the eastern flank, and also that we welcome the recent decisions of NATO summit, especially with regard to 4 additional battle groups. We see it also that we must continue to strengthen the defense and deterrence posture of NATO's eastern flank. And instead of having a enhanced forward concept, we should have a forward defense concept, also air defense instead of air policing. We must raise our readiness to fight back Russia's threat, and also be sure that there are no opportunities for Russia's miscalculations, because what we see at the moment, we see that the situation in Europe has changed since 2016, when NATO member states adopted current defense and deterrence posture, and adopted the concept of enhanced forward presence. We have a war in Europe at the moment, and also Russia's behavior is unpredictable. So we really need to make all these changes. We have to write into the strategic concept clearly that Russia is a threat, and also emphasize that NATO's principal core task is collective defense. So we very much hope that all these decisions are made by the strategic decisions are made by the upcoming Madrid summit. With regard to Russia and the overall security situation in our region, then of course it is clear that we cannot go back to the era of before the 23rd of February. So it means that we have to reflect these new concerns in our strategic documents. We must reflect that there is a country in Europe who is willing to invade its sovereign neighbors, and therefore we must be prepared in our actions to cope with this threat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And since you both given very comprehensive answers with regards to what we are doing collectively together within NATO and the EU both, let me ask you, Mr. Aurescu, what is, and you both, of course, Minister Limets, what is your assessment with regards to the Russian invasion in Ukraine? Because we are speaking a lot about aggression, but what is it in your view that we should expect? Is a ceasefire close? Is it not? What is your view on this?
Well, we monitor very closely the unfolding of the negotiations between the Russian side and the Ukrainian side. There were well, a number of consultations taking place, first in Belarus, with limited results, with some well, agreements on ceasefires, on humanitarian corridors, which were only in part respected by Russia, unfortunately. And then we have noticed this discussion in Antalya during the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, which was brokered by Turkey, and then the last meeting, which took place recently in Istanbul, and there is limited amount of information about the result. We have various, media accounts, but we need to see the concrete result of these discussions. I think at the same time that I have mentioned this not only once, I think any kind of negotiation which is undertaken under the fire of arms is not likely to bring sustainable results. What is extremely important is that first the hostilities stop and the aggression ends. And we have to see some withdrawal of forces, some concrete withdrawal of forces. We have seen some withdrawal of forces from the proximity of Kiev, and it is unclear whether this is a true withdrawal or it is only a matter of buying time and regrouping and reinforcing the military Russian presence in Ukraine to reorient towards other areas. But I think it is important that these negotiations continue, and hopefully they will bring some results. It depends a lot on these negotiations, but it also depends a lot on the cessation of hostilities. These, of course, are interlinked. Perhaps at some point in time, there is a need for a general ceasefire to be agreed upon between the parties. And against this background, then, of course, negotiations could advance on the substance. But still, there are, according to the media accounts, huge differences between the parties, especially as far as the territorial issues are concerned. It seems to be a certain common ground as far as the neutrality of Ukraine. But again, this is linked a lot and very closely linked, I would say, to the guarantees which Ukraine is asking for in order to make this neutrality sustainable. And I think there is a lot to be discussed and agreed upon in terms of what is the content of this set of guarantees, who are the guarantors. We have seen various proposals and certain states which were mentioned in the media. So I think it is difficult to assess now, as we speak, what is the outcome of the negotiations and how long the conflict will go. So we have to encourage the continuation of this negotiation, but at the same time, it is crucial that fights stop in order for these negotiations to bring some sustainable results.
Thank you. I think that in addition to this, what we see on the battleground at the moment, we have to recall what's been the Russia's attempts or intentions. Putin has said that they would like to change the security environment in Europe. It means that they don't only want to invade Ukraine, but also they want that our countries would, or NATO would withdraw its troops from our countries, that we would end the NATO's exercises in our countries, also that we would end NATO's enlargement. There are many requirements from Russia which are totally unacceptable for us, because based on European security architecture, every sovereign right in Europe, every sovereign country has a right to choose its own security guarantees in Europe. And Russia wants to change this whole concept. And this is very worrisome for us. When we speak about this war started by Russia in Ukraine, then of course we all want to see peace restored and also successful peace talks. But unfortunately, what we see, At the moment, still, Russia has not shown any attempts of willing to withdraw from Ukraine, also from helping to restore Ukrainian territorial integrity. And Ukraine is under tremendous pressure because they see the people killing every day. So I think that the international community must continue to support Ukraine because also for Ukrainian side, it's important that they have these negotiations unconditionally, without pressure, without military pressure. So therefore, I think that all what we see at the moment is, of course, important to see some dialogue between the conflict parties, but to see any long-term result coming out from these talks is, I think, a bit naive at the moment. And from the international community side, I think that it's very important to continue support Ukraine economically, but also with, of course, politically, but also with the military aid, and so that those Ukrainian forces could continue to defend their country until these peace talks bring some results for them. And also it is important to see that Russia feels this as a strategic failure for their country, because it is just totally unacceptable to start such kind of massive war, a large-scale war in Europe nowadays with thousands of killings of civilians, what we see every day. It is just unacceptable, and therefore, of course, we must continue to isolate Russia politically, but also economically with sanctions, etc., as it was said by Bogdan in the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I cannot help myself asking a question about the frozen conflict next. Mr. Aurescu, I know Romania has put on the agenda within NATO and the EU the case of frozen conflicts, and Moldova in particular, the case of Moldova dealing with refugees flows. How do you assess, considering your assessment on the war so far and considering what you both have said, what is your assessment with regards to the frozen conflicts in the region? I'm talking here Transnistria, South Ossetia, Abkhazia, all in the Black Sea, all nearby.
Well, I think what we have witnessed in Ukraine shows how important the protracted conflict resolution is, because actually this open conflict started from a protracted conflict in Ukraine, referring to the situation of the two eastern separatist provinces of Ukraine. That's how this open conflict was ignited. So this shows how important it is to reinforce and redouble our forces, our efforts, in order to solve this protracted conflict. That was the reason behind my proposal, my initiative, started in the autumn of 2020, when I have initiated, together with 10 other colleagues from the EU member states, this idea of putting this topic on the agenda of the European Union, of the Council, Foreign Affairs Council of the European Union. And we managed to have a very important strategic debate in Lisbon last year during the Gimnich ministerial in May. And following that discussion, in coordination with the High Representative, Mr. Borrell, according to the mandate which we have agreed, myself, my Austrian and my Lithuanian colleague, we have paid a visit in the South Caucasus, and we have discussed with leaders of the three countries in this region. And we have tried to imagine how the European Union can become more involved, more instrumental, more helpful in solving and at the same time in implementing certain measures in order for these protracted conflicts to be solved. And after that, we have presented in a subsequent meeting of the Foreign Affairs Council a comprehensive set of proposals inspired by that visit and at the same time with application, with relevance for all protracted conflicts. Actually, not the conflicts are protracted or frozen. The resolution of these conflicts is protracted or frozen. Actually, some of these conflicts are quite hot, as we can see now in our very close proximity in Ukraine. So we need to continue to have the protracted conflict resolution on the agenda of the European Union, but not only of the European Union, also of other international organizations. We have to discuss this within NATO, we have to discuss this within the OSCE. I'm very glad that the Polish chairmanship in office of the OSCE has accepted a Romanian diplomat, a distinguished ambassador of Romania, to serve as special representative of the chairmanship in office of OSCE for Southern Caucasus, Ambassador Moșanu, who served previously as ambassador of Romania to Belarus. And I think it's important to continue to find ways and means to solve these protracted conflicts, because they are used by Russia, which is the common denominator again, in order to destabilize these countries. And not only to destabilize these countries, but also to derail the efforts of the leadership of these countries towards democratic reforms, towards EU integration, towards NATO integration efforts sometimes, if the countries want to go on that path. So very important to keep this in the top of the agenda of the international community, because, well, this is how security is destabilized, not only in the region, not only as far as those countries are concerned, but also as far as the Europe as a whole, or the Euro-Atlantic space as a whole is concerned.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Limets, do you want to add?
Yes, thank you. And I would also continue with Bogdan's words that with all these protracted conflicts, unfortunately, we have to admit that they have a common denominator, and this is Russia. Russia is involved in all these conflicts and also does not allow to solve these conflicts. And this we see in especially in OSCE, but also in other organizations. We see that Russia has taken all these organizations as a hostage with its veto right, with its positions by not allowing to adopt communiques of these ministerial meetings, etc. So this is strategic behavior of Russia to keep conflict zones around its borders and not to let democratic space to widen closer to Russia. And of course, this is very unfortunate, but this is mostly unfortunate for the people in these countries and regions in the areas of protracted conflicts, because what we have seen, international community does not accept the independence or so-called independence of these regions, which means that we do not trade or make trade with these regions. These regions cannot develop economically. People live much poorer circumstances than they could live. So there are basically people who are suffering because of this geopolitical aggressive approach, geopolitical approach of Russia.
Thank you very much. And finally, before giving the floor to the audience here, I would like to ask you, what is Romania and Estonia thinking of doing together bilaterally? I mean, we've talked a lot about what we are doing together within NATO and the EU, and I know that you have further discussions later on this very topic. But if you could give us some insight into what we are thinking about our countries doing together, I know that we will all appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, of course, we will discuss a lot in the hours to come. We have plenty of time to elaborate on what we can do together, especially in terms of defense and security. We have a very close cooperation, as I mentioned already. And I think it's obvious from what myself and Maria just mentioned during this debate. We have a lot of interaction, and we are very like-minded. We have basically common objectives, common interests, and common approaches within EU and NATO as far as security, defense are concerned. And we are following the same efforts, and we are pushing into the same direction. We want to have, well, more security and defense. More defense means more effective deterrence, and this is the goal that we are following. At the same time, both Romania and Estonia are very responsible allies. We have in Romania assumed the decision to move from 2% to 2.5% in terms of defense expenditure, well, as far as the percentage of the GDP is concerned, allocated to defense. And I think Estonia is also paying a lot, spending a lot, assuming a lot. At the same time, we have a very close interaction in various regional formats. We speak about Bucharest 9. I just mentioned that last week we spent together with the other colleagues from this format, the 9 allies on the eastern flank, a lot of time discussing about how to well, promote these goals. The 3 Seas initiative is another very important regional initiative which both Romania and Estonia are supporting firmly, and we want to see more results, more well, interconnection projects in all 3 areas of this initiative: transport, energy, digital. Estonia is expert in digital development, and I'm counting on our cooperation in order to see more results within the 3 Seas initiative. As far as Romania is concerned, we want to see more infrastructure connecting the north and the south of this region, which is also relevant from the perspective of military mobility on the eastern flank. That's why we are promoting 2 very important projects: rail to sea, a railway connecting the Constanța port in Romania to the Gdansk port in Poland, and also Via Carpathia, which is connecting also the northern and the southern part of the eastern flank by road, by highway. Also very relevant in terms of promoting economic development of the region, stimulating recovery after the pandemic, but also relevant as far as the military mobility on the eastern flank. We are committed to the security of the northern part of the eastern flank, and that's why we have decided to resume the air policing in the Baltic states, starting with next year, with 2023. And in this way, we will bring again a very concrete contribution to the security of Estonia as well. I'm very glad to mention this publicly. So there are a lot of areas where we work together. We are glad that we are able to contribute with experts in the Cyber Defense Center of Excellence in Estonia, which is another landmark of Estonia's expertise in this area. And we would be very glad if Estonia would also contribute some experts in Romania in the HUMINT Center, the NATO Excellence Center in Romania. So a lot of areas where we can work together, where we already work together. And I'm looking forward to our discussions to identify new areas of joint cooperation.
Thank you very much, Minister Limetz. If you
Thank you very much. It's really difficult to add something to what was just said by Bogdan. We are like-minded countries, and for us, bilateral cooperation is very important in addition to the cooperation within the international organizations. And indeed, Three Seas Initiative is also very important for us. And we really appreciate your initiative in this regard because it started from this region. And also connectivity, more connections between North and South are important for us. And Estonia also organizes another digital summit this upcoming October, where we would like to continue discussions on trusted connectivity, which is a part of Three Seas initiative. Estonia also supports Romania's accession with the Schengen area and the Eurozone. We truly hope that you progress quickly towards these zones, which help to be more integrated among us. Also, we very much appreciate your recent decision to participate again in the air policing, Baltic Air Policing. It is very strategically very important for us that we have NATO allies from different regions in helping to protect our airspace. And also, thank you very much for contributing to the Center of Cyber Defense in Estonia. I think that we also are very like-minded countries in terms of EU's neighborhood policy and supportive towards Eastern Partnership, which helps to develop progress towards the democratic societies of our neighboring countries like Georgia, Moldova, of course, Ukraine, but also Azerbaijan and Armenia. And unfortunately, yes, Belarus has suspended its participation at the Eastern Partnership program at the moment, but we hope that some point they return. So I look very much forward to our discussions, and also let me say that we have not discussed about the business connections between our countries today, but tomorrow we will have also business seminars, so that we would like to support also more business contacts between our companies and especially in the areas of digital development, but also on defense industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I've seen one hand rising, and I want to give the floor because we have one question.
Thank you so much, dear moderator and colleague, Madam Colibașanu. It is my privilege to ask a question to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania and Estonia, but this time from the ranks of the think tanks and not from the diplomatic corps, where I have been side by side to the Minister for a couple of decades. Thank you for your questions because they generated so interesting and complex replies. My question starts from the fact that it results that we are facing a complex dimension or multifaceted aggression. It is not only military, it is not only economic, it is also legal and ideological. So we have the paralyzed Security Council of the United Nations. It is paralyzed by the veto power of one of the founding members of the United Nations, and it is suicidal from the point of view of their own creation, because one power, Russia, is also co-author of the Charter of the UN. This is one side of the moon, so to say. The other side of the moon is the ideological. If you read the speeches by the President of Russia and the lately by Mr. Karaganov, you will see that there is an overall ideological offensive on the entire set of values of the. You started by saying it is not only an aggression on Ukraine, it's also an aggression on the Western system of values. It is not only on the Western system of values, it is on the universal system of values. So my question is directed to you, Minister, also as a scholar in international law. You mentioned accountability, and to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia. If I would be privileged to have your answers. I hope my question is not too far-fetched. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Maghiero.
Thank you very much for this question, and indeed it is a very complex and difficult question. What to do with Russia, with a country who is aggressor and at the same time is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. Yes, internationally at the UN, of course, all the current members of the Security Council, I mean elected members and permanent members, have tried to walk around the Security Council to show that Russia is aggressor. By another resolution was adopted by 141 member states of the United Nations, it was confirmed that Russia is aggressor, but very much agree that the overall work of the Security Council is sabotaged by Russia, which means that we cannot have binding resolutions out of this council, which is the core task of the council to adopt resolutions which would help to restore peace and security globally. And unfortunately, there is no solution for the council work so far. Therefore, it is even more important that we continue to isolate Russia in the organizations where we can't do it. For example, we should not have NATO-Russia cooperation. NATO-Russia Foundation Act is void. Also, we should suspend Russia's participation from the Human Rights Council, like we did with the Council of Europe. We should not let Russia being a normal member in any of the international organizations. We should not let to have a business as usual with Russia until this war is ended and the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine is restored. And it was also mentioned by Bogdan earlier that the International Criminal Court has started its investigation process, and it is important to recall that war crimes do not have an end date. So basically all these war criminals need to be brought to the court, and justice has to be restored. And after that we can start to have another discussion which kind of relations we should have with Russia as an international community. But before that, we must continue to isolate Russia from all international organizations. Thank you.
Well, my answer will be very short. I fully subscribe to what Eva Maria just mentioned. Unfortunately, since our agenda is very tight today, we cannot spend more time, but we would like to make it again, right, Eva Maria, if possible.
Yes.
And I'm very sure that the cooperation between New Strategy Center and Estonian think tanks is something that we should support together in order to be able to create more such very interesting debates. And I promise that I will personally get involved in this important project.
Thank you. And also I would like to thank New Strategic Center for having me and this debate this morning. Thank you.
Thank you on both accounts for being here with us and sharing your views on such important issues of the day. And many thanks for the promised support to enhance this cooperation. Thank you very much again. Thank you for your time.